Peace, peace, and blessing. We here another night in the newsroom to discuss what's going on around us. The headline, what affecting us as Americans and people around the world dealing with economic, livelihood, and much, much more. I'm your host, Henry, with the co-host, Shinakma JML. I hope everybody is doing well. How you doing? How you doing tonight?
Hey man, what's up, yo? Just chilling, man. And it's getting cold out here. Winter time is definitely rolling in, and it took a little while this year. Almost halfway through November, but it's all good. And other than that, I mean, we got a good show today.
Yes, yes. Tonight in my area for the people who watching the DMV area, the temperature dropped to around 30, 37 to 34. It's cold, wind chill, and the temperature risk of dropping tomorrow. And it got word from all the way North Carolina that it snowed. So get ready for cold weather. So the first news gonna drop is what's going on with United States currency. The Chinese yen had outpaced the dollar because of the economic shutdown. China hold the line as yen stays strong against the dollar. It's not greater than the dollar, but it's stable as United States dollar is kind of shaky. The people bank of China
Yeah,
is holding the yen,
back.
huh?
I said the government shutdown set us back.
Yes, yes. Yes, everything doing well out here. So the People Bank of China is holding the yen rate tightly, setting a firm midpoint rate that claimed recent current volatile. This approach had helped anchor the yen as United States Senate edged closer to resolve its government shutdown. And fresh Chinese data hint at economic headwind. Last month, dip in exports set to struggle global demand, while an uptick in consumer spending point to to a strong market at home. So the people in China is keeping their market strong. But while
Yeah, see, and that's kind of funny, Henry. Like, based on the government shutdown, I saw something peculiar too. Because when the government wasn't gonna issue the SNAP benefit EBT, China and had ended up coming out with a commercial in China talking about donate food to the United States of America for the people who isn't gonna get the SNAP benefit. And it's kind of wild too, because in the commercial it showed like China is about three times the population of the United States,
yes, yes,
and their people who were suffering from food shortages is only 8% of the population, where in the United States is about 20%, which was kind of crazy to see that statistic on the commercial. Because they was gonna donate food to the United States so people would be able to have food on Thanksgiving.
yes. And the shocking part is last week when we done the show, we talked about United States want to send troops into Nigeria, want to send troops in Venezuela. But right now, service members is not getting paid. We got people who working in the airport who directing the traffic of the airplanes in the sky not getting paid during the government shutdown. Donald Trump is offering a bonus for them individuals who stayed on through this troubling time.
It's a little bit peculiar because like we were talking about before, off camera, that how you gonna have US service members going into the combat zone, but they're not getting a paycheck, risking their life basically, like I was saying, for free. Like, it's not that we don't appreciate our service members, because we sure do appreciate it and they defend us, you know what I mean? But at the same
Yes.
time, like, it should never be a situation where the people who defend the whole country, especially the borders of the country, not talking about border patrols or nothing like that, but I'm talking about the physical aspect of people being able to invade into America or be able to bomb America, et cetera, that these people should be always paid. It should be one of those things that gets cut right off the top. It shouldn't even have any type of a say so or a question. Those type of things should automatically be paid for. It's like paying your electric bill or your gas bill or your rent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As soon as you get paid,
Private
cut them off.
a private donor donated 100, I say 100 million to the armed forces, the Pentagon. So you could say that's around $100 each service member. And yes, it should never get that way. That's that's national security risk. And a lot of Democrats and senators on the line talking about they should never fold. They should not have went for a deal. But we seen that it's all stem from healthcare. And the main thing, sad, but before we go any further, let me not forget today is for the veterans. Thank each and every one of you for serving this great nation. For the soldiers who MIA, missing in action, and to the soldiers who was KIA, deceased in action, we miss you and we appreciate you. Each and every one of you through all the great wars that this nation faced. Thank you for your service time for the soldiers who retired and living that day, day by day. Appreciate you.
Yeah, because we got to remember today is 11/11, so, and like they always taught us in the ROTC, the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month was when they surrendered for the World War II, the end of World War II. So that's why Veteran Day is today. It's really supposed to be Armistice Day, because that was the day that the United States got the Germans and the Japanese to give up.
Yes, yeah. While we celebrate Veteran Day today, from last Monday to now, It been an uptick of racial behavior. I feel like it's false flags. I feel like it's a diversion. I feel like it's part of the divide and conquer strategy. Let a race war, a civil war against the people, then actually focus on the troubles and what we got in common. We all pay taxes. We all put forward for retirement. Some of us is on government assistance. We all American citizens. We should not be divided. But let's go to the first story.
We're outside Magen David Yeshiva in Gravesend Wednesday evening, removing these swastikas that police say were painted on a pillar and a window of the school around 6:30 a.m. According to NYPD, security discovered those two swastikas in red paint at the yeshiva near McDonald Avenue and Avenue S. Jewish residents in the area reacting to what police are investigating as a hate crime.
It doesn't make me feel safe. It feels like we're all being targeted for no reason, like we haven't done anything wrong.
They're trying to send a message that they hate us and they don't want us here. But it's not going to happen.
And these weren't the only swastikas discovered. Detectives say another Nazi symbol was found less than 2 miles away on construction barriers at Washington Cemetery near McDonald Avenue and Bay Parkway just before 10 a.m. Another reportedly found at a nearby Jewish social services center. Mayor-elect Mamdani calling the incident a disgusting and heartbreaking act of anti-Semitism. Other leaders offered similar condemnations.
This is something completely unacceptable in our state. The Hate Crimes Commission is investigating it in depth. You cannot believe what they do, measuring details and so on.
This occurred in New York, around the Brooklyn area. And the second video showed the suspect, the assailant, the one that they deemed to have spray paint around 6 in the morning, went around certain area where converts live and spray painted swastikas. There's some key points that Shin you had pointed out. Explain to the people what you explained earlier about the seller in that video?
Well, from the initial reports off of the NYPD after the investigation, and from just eyesight, clean eyesight, which we could see on the video, that man himself looked like he was a convert, dressed in the ethnic attire of those people. And if you ask me, it seems like it's another one of those, as Netanyahu said, extreme introductions to gain support. Now they're making these false flag attacks, which is really set up by their own people to make it look like they're being prosecuted, persecuted, and threatened, but really it's by their own hand and only to show a negative impact on the totality of the populace, when really, from my own observations, I'm not too sure about a lot of people, maybe in the audience or whatnot, but I've noticed that since a lot of this thing, the issues have been arising with Gaza, et cetera, a lot of people who are non-converts have been segregating themselves away from these people in general, because people don't want to have to pay consequences for actions that wasn't committed by them, or for people misinterpreting language, or false statements, or anything that they could try to deem as credible against your person for so-called anti-Semitism, and which we don't need to get into that. We've gotten into that word in several other shows in the past about how that word doesn't really technically apply to them if they're converts. Because if they're Ashkenazim or Ashkenazi, all you have to do is simply look it up in Genesis 10. We don't have to go too deep into that, but it's the best for anybody, especially if you're Christian, to make sure you're well informed, that you read Genesis 10 and have an understanding of where Ashkenaz falls in the table of the nations and under the sons of Noah. So you could understand, because anti-Semitism means that you are against Shemitic people, which is Shem, the son of Noah, and his descendants, whereas Ashkenaz is the descendant of Japheth. And it is shown that because these people are Khazarian, if that's the country that they come from, the land they come from, Khazaria, and they want to make it so everybody in the world has to submit to special treatment of these people, which, we Negroes, you know what I mean? So-called Negroes, right? So y'all on mute too, Henry, by the way. Y'all on mute. So it's called Negroes, you know what I mean? So we already know what it's like not to get preferential treatment, or have people always tell you got to be equal, or you got to be able to do it yourself, or you got to be able to take what comes with being who you are. So these people have to do the same, you can't just be specializing or segregating people when you feel like it, and then when people who look like us try to apply the same logic equally across the board, now all of a sudden everybody's looking at us like we're just complaining.
Yes. Okay. I want to do the odds. The the main key thing when I saw in the second video, we gonna go straight, cut it, and explain certain things. I'm going to New York soon. Been in New York recently. The main key thing that I witnessed was the wind. The wind blew my fiance hat off her head. Not once, several times. The wind. I understand a YN, a young man, young woman wearing a ski mask to keep the wind out your face. But this individual didn't have a coat on. The main thing people could witness is the person had a black cap. Not just a black cap, a black hat. And I was showing pictures earlier. This is the black hat. If somebody going in a convert neighborhood and somebody pull them over or try to stop them, they won't stop them because they know that it's one of theirs out of their community. He riding the bike with that kind of hat. We can see it on the surveillance video. This the hat. So false flag is being used in front of our face.
Not only just the hat, though, Henry, he also has the same jacket on that they're all wearing in these pictures as well. If you notice that, he's wearing the same jacket, the same black pants. It's basically he was wearing his whole outfit, and we know why he was wearing the outfit, because in that neighborhood, nobody's going to question him riding his bike around in them and think he's the assailant, because he's of the people. So they wouldn't have even suspected him, you know. And
yeah,
it's one of those things where you're like hiding in plain sight.
History was made. New York City, history was made. The first mixed immigrant to become mayor in New York, a Democratic socialist, a Muslim, someone who is a strong supporter of the Palestinian cause. So it would be obvious for someone to say, if they not taking the political hype or taking debate, who use their logic and realize that it is easier to make people believe that it's a boogeyman coming after the converts. And they need more protection. They need a protection status, as anything that go against them is wanted for a hate crime, wanted for special privilege.
Yeah, but see, we can't. This is where this type of stuff gets me, because they're going off of these little frivolous situations to try to get legislation through for special privilege when we have people being lynched every other month in America who look like us, and we can't even get a proper investigation done for these people. And we're talking about actual, unalivings and demises of people, hanging from trees. And we can't even get a proper, appropriate investigation into these things. These people is getting a special treatment off of people spray painting symbols on buildings. And if you ask me, New York City is full of spray painted buildings.
Yes. And not just that type of behavior. We still having police incident of shooting individuals in their back up in ATL, Atlanta. A father, a man just like us. They got shot by an off-duty officer. And we don't know how far that investigation will go, but we will seek more information and bring it to you.
It's just one of those things, like we had the other show where Netanyahu said that they're not going to spare any expense to try to promote pro-Israel rhetoric and support, however, of influence they have to use in order to gain the support and to hold on to it. So this seems like one of those tactics where they're trying, just like with the legislation, like if you speak anything ill of Israel or anything political going on, they can put you at 5 years in jail, $20 million fine now. So they're definitely giving these situations more special preferential treatment. But if you ask me, we still haven't seen any extreme behavior warranting those type of protections, if you ask me.
Yeah. And the other thing is we could burn United States flag. We could talk down on our United States government. It is our constitution right. But if you talk down on Israel, the genocide in a particular way, you get punished. That is taking away our individual sovereignty. And
not only that, it's also a direct violation of the First Amendment right, because remember, the free speech is protected as long as you're not making threats or direct attacks on people with verbal abuse. Then it's supposed to be acceptable as free speech.
yes. So recently in Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, recruitment papers went out to recruit individuals for the KKK. So let's get into this.
A Monday morning commute disrupted after people walking near Cross Street Market found these flyers signed by the KKK strewn across streets and sidewalks.
People who don't think like regular people, who think real destructive and crazy.
Neighbors tell us the flyers were quickly picked up and thrown away, but the message has left people uneasy.
It's really sad because we're in a divided country now, and it doesn't represent me as a white man, and For anybody that's putting them up, man, they need to get out of our area and our neighborhoods.
Baltimore City Council member Zach Blanchard said he was disgusted when he heard about this happening in his district and calls on city, state, and federal leaders to denounce the increased incidents of hate happening to multiple groups all across the country.
This is definitely something that I take extremely seriously in my district, and there's unequivocal condemnation both from the council, from the mayor and his team, from the police department. This is not something we mince words with. There's no space for this, and we don't pretend like there is.
He says this is not representative of who we are as a city.
There's no space for this, and we don't pretend like there is.
He says this is not representative of who we are as a city.
There's no space for this, and we don't pretend like there is.
He says this is not representative of who we are as a city.
There's no space for this, and we don't pretend like there is.
He said.
Okay.
So having an understanding, they gotta see. We gotta realize something with that, right? They're free to do what they like as long as they're not hurting anybody, right? But the part of what they're doing that becomes a illegal in the situation is there's no solicitation, meaning that they're not supposed to be putting up posters or handing out flyers and stuff like that for the recruitment in public, because that's solicitation. And you're not allowed to do that unless maybe like you're talking about religious organization like Christian church or a mosque or something of that nature. You can do it. But these because you got to remember something about KKK, right? It is a known fact that this is a hate group. So it's not like it's publicly acceptable either as a organization, I guess is the best way to call it. Because I'm not trying to be too biased on the situation, because you ain't got to look at me to know what side of the coin I fall on with this, but but I'm trying to be unbiased in my interpretation of what's going on. And I can't, in one instance, in the other previous stories, speak about First Amendment rights and then try to trample on another group's First Amendment rights, right? Because then I would be being hypocritical doing that. Even if I don't agree with their rhetoric, if I don't agree with their stances on their ideology. But at the same time, there's also laws against solicitation. That's the same thing like we can't go out here and start recruiting people in the streets for a militia. You know what I'm saying? We can't do that. We can't. Because remember, it says in the Constitution, we got the right to form a militia, right?
Yeah.
But it's also illegal to solicit people to join the militia, meaning if we're going around putting up posters, recruitment posters, and going around handing people flyers and stuff like that to try to recruit them into our militia, if we had one, it's a similar thing, just like gang. Like you got to think about it honestly, right? Just like gangs. If the Bloods and the Crips was out here with flyers and posters trying to recruit folks, it would be the same reaction. You know what I mean? Like, it's not publicly acceptable because these are not constructive social groups, right? It's not like it's the Boys and Girls Club of America or the Girl Scouts or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, if the Girl Scouts is out here handing out flyers because they want people to go join the Girl Scouts, that's still solicitation. They can't do that. That's why, if you notice, they don't really do that anymore. Like where they'll be standing out in front of the supermarket, because they used to do that. Stand out in front of the supermarket or Target or somewhere like that and try to recruit families with little girls to go to get their daughters to sign up for the Girl Scouts, right? So it's just you gotta make sure when you do these type of things, you're doing it in a legal sense. And though it's solicitation when you're basically advertising it, right? A poster, a flyer, because it's not a business. You're not. It's not like if we're handing out flyers to go to the club on Saturday. You know what I mean? That's different. That's a business. So that's advertising. That's not solicitation. Solicitation is me trying to convince you to join social clubs.
Yeah.
That's private.
Like
so you have to do it.
When I look at it, I feel like somebody won a civil war. And this civil war is not states versus the federal government or the federal government against the people or anything, but this civil war is against you and me, regular people. It is divide on race, divide on who we vote, our political affiliation. They want brothers to fight brothers, cousins to fight cousins for a political point of view of the direction of this nation. And this is to take off of what we've been seeing. What we've been seeing is what comedians, the untold truth. We get told about it, but everybody like it's a conspiracy. You've been prejudice. You've been anti something. But we realized that recently Paramount had drawn up a blacklist of actors who supported Gaza. It'd be hard for these actors to work in studios that dealing with Paramount. And Paramount is HBO and several other programming, other networks. So
you gotta remember Paramount is also with Viacom.
Yes. And that's MTV and so much more. And that's showing that what we showed on one video.
Don't forget, it's not, you got to remember, it's not just one way too. It's on both sides of the aisle. It's on all the channels. Like you got to remember that because people don't even apply this type of logic. Because you're talking about Food Network, so that means if you're a chef, you're trying to get on TV. Things of that nature. You got to be smart out here because a lot of these, I don't want to say corporation because it's not technically corporations. I would say media groups that we already know who runs these groups, these converts, and no offense to them, because you gotta give them respect for that because obviously they're the ones that are funding these shows, funding these networks. So they're coming out of their own pocket up front to give people like me and you a chance. Because remember, they own the YouTube too, but they're allowing us to be on the platform and speak our mind freely even though it's within the guidelines of the platforms, right? But we are also intelligent human beings, so we're supposed to be able to intellectualize these concepts without overstepping the boundaries and the parameters that are set by the funders of the platforms, right? But it doesn't mean that we don't have to speak our piece. It means that we have to be mindful of how we say what we say, not necessarily the information that we're disseminating, because they can't be mad at us for disseminating information, but they can hold us accountable for our opinions. And especially if you're making baseless claims or you're just coming off cuff with emotionalized statements.
Yes.
And remember, this is one thing about a lot of actors, right, Henry? The same thing with the rappers, right? The same thing with the rappers. A lot of people in regular society, you know, regular people, they look at these people like they're like how you're supposed to look at people who got PhDs and master's degrees and, you know, and reputable members of society. But they're looking at these entertainers like they're the ones who have the high level education and greater understanding of what's going on, when really all they do is memorize lines and portray characters on a screen. They're not really, how can I say, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to them, because they're obviously professionals at what they do. It takes a certain talent and skill set, but they're not academics or intellectuals, you know? So especially when it comes to politics and things like that, because they don't have the degrees for that stuff, you know? So how are you going to take what they say for face value? Like, think about it, right? So Paramount is saying that X and Y Z actors and actresses, they're not going to be working with them because of their statements they made about Gaza and various other Israeli intelligence situations going on. And none of them have military background or have military tactic and training as a specialty in their realms of studies, geopolitics, or anything of that nature. And they're speaking on these things like they're the senator from California or something like that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes, yes. And it's a lot going on around the world and here in America. It's like whatever trending topic the media paint for us as a people is like a program trying to program us and channel our thought, channel our anger to a particular way. We cannot be divided. We must know what direction as a country where we headed. Our standing on the world stage is shaky because we are coming out of war, supporting war, preparing for new war. We are seen as
the regular civilians. My bad. I just wanted to say this part while you were saying that the regular civilians, everyday people, they're not doing their due diligence either to have comprehension and understanding of what's going on, but they still want to give a opinion on these subject matters without understanding the totality of the matter, or how it's posturing, or how its military maneuvers are being executed, and why. We have to, as a people, individually begin to take our civic duty as more seriously, even though technically the system, like the Congress, doesn't really want us to be too educated or overly educated in these systems, in these subjects, because then we can question their motives and why they do the things that they do and for what benefit, because we can have a greater understanding now as individuals of what's going on and how it's being presented to us, because the presentation itself is very swayed, leaning in their favor, as we've seen with a lot of the media, just even with something as simple as the SNAP EBT benefits, how the Republicans are saying it's because the Democrats won't open back up the government. The Republicans and then the Democrats are saying that, well, if the Republicans would have just did XYZ, the government would be open and everything would have been funded and going light and would have been going. But also, we have to, as the people, understand that America is running a $40 trillion deficit, and when Joe Biden left the office, it was a $33 trillion deficit. Now it's 40 trillion. So we went up 7 trillion in 1 year off of these programs that obviously Donald Trump has taken away a good majority of them. But it's also trying to unbankrupt the country from this massive debt and to really set us up as a country to be more prosperous in the future, because we're suffering really of our own doing, because we have all these programs that are not fully funded through realistic means. It's just printing money. And that's why, as Henry mentioned earlier in the beginning of the show, that the yen has surged up and now is even with the United States dollar, when for decades now, the United States dollar was the sole powerhouse in the economic field when it came to the currency. And obviously, we got digital currency as well, like Bitcoins. But that's why we need to make sure we're on point with what we allowing the politicians to do and allowing the government to maneuver with, because they want to dictate to us the power when really they only got the policy because we allowed it through the consent with our vote. So you have to remember that just because you voted them in there doesn't mean they can do what they want to do. That's why, as the constituency, the people who vote and support these candidates, even if you didn't vote for those candidates, but they're in your district or your gubernatorial area, you have to make sure as a civilian you stay on top of these people to execute properly their job. Just like if you go to the store, you want the cashier to make sure he's ringing your prices up for your items correctly, Or if you go to the gas station, you want to make sure that you're not paying exorbitant amounts of money for a gallon of gas. So you have to also, in the same breath, make sure that you're telling Congress and staying on top of the municipalities and House of Representatives, senators, to make sure that they're doing the job and holding them accountable for the things that they said that they were going to improve and to repair the damage done from situations such as this, where the government is shut down and the currency is losing ground in the international stage, which me and Henry was talking about that the other day. How is the government shut down for 3 months and it hasn't affected our credit rating?
Yeah. And a key thing that I've been realizing as we going forward into the next topic is that the shutdown that we had experienced is due because of the bill that is known as the Affordable Care Act, or AKA the Obamacare. And the key part that I was researching is when Obama made the pitch about this healthcare, it was because insurance would not go beyond a certain point, that premium would not raise, that people would be able to join the healthcare program without dealing with larger bills. And it was to the point that if you did not sign up for the healthcare, you would get fined. As American citizen, you would get fined if you did not join the healthcare plan. And with that, premiums is going higher.
Not only that, they had to give a subsidy onto healthcare industry, and it's funny how they forced it, and they force jobs now to give you the health insurance. Even if you're working part-time, they have to provide you with a health insurance. But even then, these private insurance is not following through with appropriated full coverage healthcare, because at a certain extent they're going to stop covering you because of expense. Example, myself, I'm on kidney dialysis, which I've known people who they had their insurance runs out after a certain amount of money is spent. In total, most people who have private insurance, it works like that, where if you spend X amount of dollars in a single year, you done ran up the healthcare coverage to a certain extent where now they're not going to cover you. You're going to have to come out of pocket. And I can only imagine people who have to do chemotherapy because they have cancer or other such ailments where it requires major treatment, and these private insurance, God forbid you can't work, and then your private insurance tells you that they can no longer cover you because you ran out of your healthcare premium. And that's really saddening, especially considering that it was enforced.
And also, with the healthcare, we also got stimulus checks been flown around. We done the show a few months ago, and a few months ago was around the beginning of the tariffs. And we explained on the show that individuals could be receiving up to $2,000. The same idea had been floated around. So let's go into Capitol Hill.
U.S. President Donald Trump is warning of an economic and national security disaster if the Supreme Court overturns its use of emergency powers to impose sweeping tariffs on nearly every country. Speaking Monday, Trump claimed the tariffs have generated trillions in tariff and investment income.
The numbers were reported so incorrectly. The real numbers are trillions of dollars have been taken in or gotten in terms of investment from the tariffs.
Trump had previously floated the idea of using tariff revenues to pay for what he calls a dividend to lower-earning Americans, and repeated his plans on Monday.
We're going to issue a dividend to our middle-income people and lower-income people of about $2,000, and we're going to use the remaining tariffs to lower our debt.
During last week's oral arguments on the tariff case, Supreme Court justices cast doubt on Trump's authority to impose tariffs under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which contains no references to tariffs. Justice Amy Coney Barrett suggested it could be a mess for the courts to administer refunds to U.S. importers who have paid tariffs that were declared illegal. Trump took issue with media reports about the amount of duties collected that the government might have to repay if the Supreme Court agrees with a lower court that Trump's sweeping tariffs were illegal.
So they're not giving the right numbers. It would be an economic disaster. It would be a national security disaster if we lost the case in the Supreme Court.
It remains unclear exactly when the highest court will rule and whether companies will be entitled to refunds of more than $100 billion in IEEPA tariffs paid so far if Trump loses.
Yeah, see, that would be bad if they have to pay if the government has to pay the corporations back the tariff money. That would be bad because, number one, that's going to cause us like a implosion in the international, in causing international incident, because now what about, we're talking about only individual paying back the individual corporations at that point, because remember, the corporations are the ones who are trying to get their money back. But what about all these countries that have already paid the tariffs as well? Now they're going to try to come in a lawsuit to try to get their money back if they find out that if the Supreme Court rules that the tariffs is illegal, which tariffs is not illegal. I don't understand how they keep saying that, because if tariffs is illegal, why are we paying sales tax? You know what I'm saying? Come on.
I think it's to the point that Trump used his authority without Congress to enforce or to bring about the tariffs. And they feel like he didn't have the executive power to make that executive order. But the benefit of having tariffs is taking the burden of the government. Because we have the government who spend on the military and the government who spend on government program, Social Security, and so much more. The tariff take the burden off of taxpayers and put another revenue through the government. We as the people have to deal with tariffs more than a corporation, because a corporation could have a toy.
The check is only gonna accumulate about $390 billion of an expense, right? To give everybody in the middle class to the low income the $2,000 check, right? And it's going to be only $390 billion. That's not a lot of money, considering that the rest of the money, which is a couple $2 to 4 trillion, is going to be able to, that's because remember, that's not even $1 trillion. That's not even $500 billion. Maybe it's about a little bit more than $1 $1/3 trillion, right? So the rest of the 3 trillion, 2 trillion is going to go immediately to cutting into the debt, which is what we need if we want to fund these social programs, etc. And like you just said, Henry, that's why it's critical that we keep the tariffs going. It's not killing us to pay these tariffs because, I mean, it's only really on goods that's coming from overseas, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like when you go to the store and you pick up a Coca-Cola or a bag of chips or whatever, you're going to pay a tariff because that's made in the USA, you know? Or if you get beef or chicken or things of that nature, these things are produced in the United States of America. So you're not going to be paying a tariff on that. Really, the only things you're going to be getting hit for them tariffs off is you might have to pay some tariff on some Jordans. You might have to pay some tariff if you want to buy a new TV. If you got a foreign car, you might have to pay some tariffs on some parts, you know, importing the parts for your car. But these are things that you just have to live with because the simple fact is we got to pay our bills.
Yes, because if we don't pay our bill, the main key part is that's a national security issue of our sovereignty. Because banks will be owned by banks, be owned by other countries, corporations, because we cannot pay our national debt down. Is also to the key part that while the government is having tariff in place, we could get, I call it a rebate. The dividend, I call it a rebate. Because we as Americans, we spend and buying merchandise so we can have the tariff get paid. So we are at trying times here, especially during this wintertime, prices of food going up, but it's not stopping people. People still going into Walmart. People still going into Target. People still grocery shopping. It might be just a wake-up call in some people's head, and other people, this is just a day they're going to go over their head. Oh, this happened. Let me go on with my life. Then actually looking at this situation and saying, hey, I need to do something different. We need to do something different, how we spend money, how we utilize money, and the investment for the future. Not just for ourselves living day to day, but how will our children survive in the near future if we do not work as units to keep our families afloat?
But you also have to realize, too, it's going to be a retail holiday. You know, Black Friday is this month, so you know people's going to buy they're going to buy their new TVs. That's tariffs. People's going to buy their new PlayStations. That's tariffs. You see what I'm saying? We're going to have people buying new computers. That's tariffs. People's going to be buying new iPhones. That's tariffs. Samsung Galaxy, that's tariffs. You see what I'm saying? Like, and it's good too because think about it. Think about all the Black Fridays in the years past without the tariff, right? Everything that people bought on those retail holidays, right? If we had the tariffs then maybe the debt wouldn't be so outrageous and other things would have been funded that had to get scrapped on the congressional floor. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like things that Congress had to scratch out of the programs, out of the bills. You know what I'm saying? Certain programs, example, right? Like music teachers in high school, or after school band, different things like that the government can't afford to fund right now because of the way that the debt is looking. But if we had the tariffs, maybe some of these programs that got canceled over the years by a lack of funding would have been funded.
And some people like, we don't need government. But when we actually look at a situation, we need government in different cases. I'm going to give an example with healthcare and Walmart. With the high prices of Walmart, when the food stamp epidemic, you would call it epidemic, pandemic, or just a trend, because people was crying and going crazy before November even hit, before that food stamp even came on. Everybody was in an uproar. Before that, Walmart was banking, having profit. We see it on the news, and we see it when we pay attention to the stocks, that American companies is doing good with windfall profits. So what's going on is you can have Walmart, they see that, oh, there's no food stamp coming. Food stamp is a subsidy. The United States government is giving Walmart a subsidy. The United States government is giving healthcare provider insurance subsidies. They got to get the money from somewhere. The government got to get the money from somewhere. But when the subsidy was about the...
Henry, let's even go with let's simplify it too for people, and they say, oh, why do we even got the government? We don't need the government. Well, this is an easy way to explain it to a lot of people in America that the majority of people is going to understand. Remember that next time you're driving down the street and you hit a pothole. Where's that we don't need the government, because without the Department of Public Works, who's gonna pave the streets? Who's gonna make sure that those potholes don't start turning into craters?
And you also have what's going on is how manipulation occur and what our government could do to regulate. That's what regulations come in. When the food stamps was getting cut off, Walmart cut supply to keep prices the way that a corporation won't. It got less inventory, supply and demand. If you have less supplies and you have a big demand for it, the prices go up. And
you got to see that if it has, you got to think about that, right? So say normally because of the food stamp, let's just use like a box of cereal for example, that Walmart is going to sell 10 of them boxes of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, right? They're going to sell 10 of them because with the EBT, right? So now, because they wasn't going to get no EBT, instead of getting 10 boxes of the Cinnamon Toast Crunch in the inventory, now they're going to only get 2.
Yeah.
And that's because you got to remember, they got to justify the price now, too. Because when you got more, if yes, because remember, you're talking about supply and demand. I'm talking about inventory and the till, right? I'm talking about inventory with the till. Because you know what I'm talking about, Henry. You know what I mean. That we know that we're gonna sell that if the EBT card is on the 1st, that we're gonna sell all 10 of these boxes of Cinnamon Toast Crunch because we sell it every single 1st.
Yeah.
We sell it every single time. The computer knows. So now, say if the truck day is 2 days before the 1st, and that truck day is those 10 boxes of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. You know what I'm talking about, right? In the inventory.
Yeah.
But if they do ahead of time that they're not going to get, we wasn't going to get the food stamp. Now they can go into the till in the computer and adjust it to only 2 boxes from 10. Because now they know people got to pay cash for that. How likely is it they're going to sell all 10 boxes of Cinnamon Toast Crunch when 8 out of the 10 boxes that they sell is, so now they know they only want to bring in 2 because out of the 10 boxes, only 2 was bought with cash.
Yeah.
So now that makes it even worse because it's a supply and demand, but they got to justify the price, meaning they got to justify on their bottom line why they got 10 boxes up there. Because now what if the 10 boxes, let's say we didn't get the EBT until January, right? So out of them 10 boxes going to sit there until December 1st. And then if they do, the way the inventory works, it's going to have 10 more boxes coming in 2 days before December 1st.
Yeah.
Which now you're going to be sitting on 20 boxes of cereal. Now you got to put the price down so you can sell it.
Yeah.
Too much supply, not enough demand. So, and that's one of those things you got to take into account with the government spending and the tariffs and all of that. You got to take those type of things into account too.
Yes, true. So with that tariff, as we discussed, we're going to go emphasize one more time what Donald Trump said when they had calculated the money.
And one of the things we're going to do, we're going to issue a dividend to our middle income people and lower income people of about $2,000. And we're going to use the remaining tariffs to lower our debt. We're going to be lowering our debt, which is a national security thing.
$2,000. What can you really do with $2,000? We got these new type of cars, so a lot of these old cars might not be on the road, but $2,000 could be a down payment. $2,000, if you want to go into a 50-year mortgage, you can. Or you could take it, invest the money, $2,000, invest the money, and see for the long term of how far they'll go.
Hey, if you were smart, right, Henry, you would put maybe like $200, $300 of that $2,000 onto digital currency like Bitcoin because of the future transitions of the U.S. economy into digital currency. So, you might want to start making investments now. So when the time comes, that money is already appreciated.
Yes, yes. It took a while, but it didn't take the whole year. Yeah, is this every month or one-time payment? As far as I know, this will be a one-time payment. I don't know if it's going to be around tax time, but first, this is a proposal. It haven't
You
passed
about it like
Congress.
a dividend. If they're saying it's a dividend, right? You have to think about it like the stock market. You'll only get paid a dividend if you hit your marks, your milestone, the goal. Like remember when we had initially did the show about this, Henry, and remember what Trump said. If the tariffs reaches a certain amount of trillions of dollars in income, he was going to give us the dividend, the 2000, because that's it if it hits that mark. So it seems like it's a one-time payment right now, a one-off payment, because we can't really tell the future. But if it's a true dividend, every time we make those profitability marks, we're gonna get that dividend check.
And it could be in two ways. It could be quarterly, every 4 months. Okay, it could be yearly. That's in the stock market. Shareholders, they get dividend in that type of way every quarter, and in a year they count their dividend.
Yeah, it would be good if they give it to the people every year around this time, like at the end of October and early November, because it will also help, because then it would be able to be used to help bolster the economy based on these holidays and these retail holidays where people are more viable to spend money.
True, true. And it's also might be more money coming to Americans in the form of healthcare. We don't know if it's going to be vouchers or how the government going to fix this. And I look at the history of healthcare where it was individual doctors and went from individual doctors to a system that was formed by people like Rockefeller, the Vanderbilt, J.P. Morgan. And now the healthcare, the government is subsidizing this. The government cannot fit the bill. We as Americans, at the beginning of Obamacare, not all Americans was able to afford health care. Working or not, some people just didn't go to the doctor. So President Trump is also working on a proposal to change the way we deal with health care. So let's go into the coverage.
Okay, Any questions?
About that, Henry. Think about what you just said, right?
Of the deal that's happening right now in Capitol Hill to end the government.
Well, it depends what deal we're talking about. But if it's a deal I heard about, that's certainly, they want to change the deal a little bit. But I would say so. I think based on everything I'm hearing, they haven't changed anything. And we have support from enough Democrats. And we're going to be opening up our country. It's too bad it was closed, but we'll be opening up our country very quickly.
Mr. President, that deal does reverse the mass firings your administration put through during the shutdown. Did you sign off on that, and will you abide by that if this passes?
Well, I will be. I'll abide by the deal. The deal is very good. We're not going to be giving $1.5 trillion to people that came in from jails and from, the gangs and drug dealers and all of these others that they wanted to be given health care, which would have hurt our health care system. I hope that we're going to be able to have a health care where Lindsay and I were discussing it, Jim and I were discussing it, and Katie, we discussed it. We want a health care system where we pay the money to the people instead of the insurance companies. And I tell you, we're going to be working on that very hard over the next short period of time.
So that sounds like the American people will be receiving money and they would have to find their own health care providers because the government is giving subsidies. That is our taxpayer money to big pharmas who create the medicine. And when you look into insurance, how insurance works, you pay into insurance. They take the money that you give into insurance and they put it into the stock market. You a stock. And every month you pay, that corporation, that insurance company, have a windfall of profit. And it raising. The prices is raising on America, on businesses, small businesses, on you and me. When premiums come involved, you can stay healthy, you can work out, you try your best to stay healthy, but things happen. You can't stop a cold from happening. A common cold, the flu. We seen a lot of things changing in front of our face. I don't know because I'm not in that position with the politics and the government as they reform healthcare. But it will affect us eventually. Each state. And right now, we still dealing with federal courts discussing will states pay partial or the whole of food stamp. Some people have 6 kids. And in their perspective, they need the food stamp. Some people don't have the means to work at a particular time. Might have came from incarceration, walking out of jail, and you don't have stable income at that time. Food stamp do help. You have some people medically imbalanced. I'm not using imbalance as a as a hurtful way of disrespecting people. I hope nobody took it that way. I'm talking about elderly that's too old to work. I want to thank
Yeah, but
everybody
you
for
gotta
coming
understand how
through.
that works. Because that's kind of a misinterpretation, right? Because if they're elderly, right, say they're in their 80s, they're in their late 70s, early 80s, right?
Yeah.
They was paying taxes before we was born.
True.
So how can we say anything to those people about it being imbalanced? If anything, it's imbalanced for them because they've been working a good 60 out of the 80 years of their life, maybe even because that back in that time, maybe even they've been working 70 to 75 years of their life.
Yeah.
These people was paying into the system before we was born. They were paying into the system well into our lives. So it's only right that they get what they paid into. You have to
True,
remember that
true.
part.
No, what I mean is, let's say someone who's 60 or even 70, their bones hurting, they paid their due into society, and they cannot go out there and cut grass like they used to. And it's time for them to eat. They don't have no food stamp benefit, and they don't have family members. They would have to rely on food pantries. And a lot of people finding out a lot of churches don't have the capacity to help the community. I want to thank the churches and the organizations that helping people in need during this trying time. But think about if our government collapsed, safeguards need to get put in place. Our politicians should need to stop bickering partisan issues for votes, popularity, but actually help the people who put into the system, the people who need food stamps. I know it's a want out there. Some people commit food stamp fraud, government fraud to get money. We understand that, but that's a small percentage. A small percentage. Our health care is getting shaken. Our safety nets is getting shaken. Because if you cut the food stamp, it hurt not just the businesses, it hurt our farmers. The surplus that have not get sold on the market will rot, and farmers will not be able to take care of their family. So it go all the way around to keep this economy going. So when some people like, as I heard on TikTok and several other places, people like, oh, you need to get out of government assistance and get a job. Or talking down about people getting food stamps. People got to understand that it's not for people to be lazy. It's a safety net. There's some people out here working part-time. Hard to find a job, but they able to work part-time, and that part-time job a week might make $300. 300. You could say $1,200 in a month. The rent in itself might be $1,000. So you have $200 left to pay bills. Phone bill, 60. Internet bill or water and light could be in the hundreds. So some people have to put their bills on the back burner. But food, you can't put it on a back burner. You need assistance. And that's why they put in the regulations with food stamp, with able-bodied people who can find jobs. They know that some people could work and work. But while you're working, you need to stay healthy and you need food in your stomach as you proceed to help the economy. So that subsidies need to be in place. So it's...
Well, you know how it is, Henry. We just gotta be cooperative, you know. It's a collaborative effort where all the country, right? That's why it's news. Never end the work in service, because the greater United States of America, whether people like to admit it or not, it's a community, right? So, and a community is only as strong as its weakest members, right?
True.
So, if the people who have to go to work are unable because they have no food, so they have no energy to go to work, to get up and go to work, or children gotta go to school and they don't have any food to eat, you know, you gotta think about it. You know, everybody's seen the Snicker commercials, you know what I mean? We're not sponsored by Snickers, but you know, they're not you when you're hungry. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, bro. You know the commercials. There's some real talk with that. That's scientific clinical studies right there done on that. If you don't eat, it's not as likely that you're going to be open to learning, especially children, you know. Especially eating a well-balanced diet, because, you know, a lot of people don't like to say that part because they want to be like vegetarian or whatever diets they want to apply, but you got to just make sure you're getting the well-balanced of the proteins and vitamins and minerals. That's why I don't really like to harp too much on food groups, more so than nutrition itself.
Yes. We is at a pivotal time at this time right here. We go forward with grace, or we could fall. People gotta understand, America can make money two ways. They can have a sovereign fund and invest money, or they can do it the old way as an empire, and that is to conquer. that's going to raise to the debt, make short-term gains, but in the long term, it's kicking the barrels down the road. Because if we go to war with someone, it change the projectile. The way you can structure loans with another country, the resource another country could provide, it could benefit us as an empire. But how many of our children, grandchildren, friends, and family members that it will hurt? The politics in Washington need to straighten this out. Because we as the people, we seen it firsthand that something is amiss. I'm not picking Democrats and Republicans. I'm saying as America, we here in America need to voice our opinions. We also got to take part in what's going on. Because they took charge in New York City. They feel that Madani, I hope I said his name right, is a fit for them. Other cities, other states, not every state going to have a election, but some coming up in 2026, 2030, 2028. Some of these Senate seats will be open to change hands from Democrats to Republicans or Republicans to Democrats.
Right.
Some people retiring. Whatever idea that y'all feel is best to lead this country, go out and vote. Go out and prepare as if another disaster is on its way. I know it's hard. It's hard for people to have a rainy day fun because it seems like every day it's raining. Sometimes we don't know where to start, where to put our money at. Should I put my money in Bitcoin? Should I put in the stock? Should I buy gold? Should I just stock up my house with food? Should I just live day to day? It gets scary. It's scary out there for us as Americans living day to day. Some people lose their job. It'd be hard. Shelters full. Some people don't want to go to the shelter. They want to be able to provide for themselves and make it. And that's what we here at News, we talk about never in the working service. We talking about real life situations, what the government do to affect us. What's going on in one neighborhood that could affect another neighborhood. What's going on around the world that affect us here in the U.S. We not gonna be a puppy. We not going to be obedient servant and serve a political party. No, we here to serve you, the people. News, never in the working service, is here to serve you, the people, and to discuss scary topics that we don't understand sometimes, have to sit down and break the issue. Where our money going? Where our money worth something? Where our time and effort to survive would be in vain? The government shut down for the longest that it ever have. Would this be the first of many? Would this be the last example of what could happen if the government crashed? These are the topics that we talk about, and we're going to talk about more to come. The government just reopened. People was working that did not get paid for weeks on time. That means people have homes and not able to pay their mortgage, their lights and utilities, their utility. Some people having a second job, Uber, Lyft. It making people think like me. I'm like, hey, I got 2 jobs. It's necessary with how much I get paid. So I know the effort I put in, other people here in America is going through the same struggle or even worse.
Hey, remember, you're not alone, brother. I go to dialysis, right? Like today, I went to dialysis. As soon as I got out of dialysis, I'm in there doing the DoorDash off the rip, like I got a regular 9 to 5 job, but I also do the DoorDash on the days where I'm not at work. And even sometimes when I get out of work or before I go to work, I'm doing the DoorDash. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not like I'm getting rich off of these modalities of making the money, but it pays the bills. And as long as the bills get paid and you got a roof over your head and the food is there, you got food, In America, we gotta get out of the lack mentality and get more into the gratitude mentality for being able to pay your bills and have a shelter and because like you said earlier, the homeless shelters is full. Donald Trump just made it illegal to be homeless. So it's imperative that we have, by the grace of God, we got to have gratitude that we're able to provide ourselves a living. A lot of these people who got the money or got resources out here, flexing on folks and everything, that's nice and dandy. But what would be a real flex is if you use those gifts that God gave you to help people who themselves could apply techniques and wisdom that you did to get to where you're at in order to accelerate their own growth into a better financial economic situation.
True. I'm kind of can't wait for that little $2,000 and try to save it up and invest in something. like I do landscaping on the side, so it might can help to get a trailer. So then trying to push a big run lawnmower on the bed of the truck, I could put the run lawnmower on the trailer and be able to go to different locations and be more safer. So we might gotta go into the era of creating family businesses, family enterprise, where we helping each other to fulfill the gaps in the house. Then teaching individualism, we actually speak tribalism, where family discuss and bond over how the house going to be run. Some people single. They the boss of their own domain. Some people got children. Some people got children and single. So the way of life, the way that we used to think, need to rewire our brain. Because things to come, because we already witnessed that the government could function during a pandemic. We just witnessed the government could function during a government shutdown. But one thing that don't function correctly, and that's the regular people. If a pandemic occur where the government shut down, where you cannot go to work, that they just say, hey, we don't need you to come into work today. That means you're not making money. And if you don't have no stamps, something substitute, a lot of people will be starving in these streets.
Hey, look, they might tell you not to come to work on Friday. And then by Monday morning, they got robots replacing you in your job.
True.
This 2025 about to be 2026. People got to take these things into account. Just make sure you're prepared. That's why I say you got to have gratitude and appreciation for what you got. Making the most of what you have and doing what you got to do to maintain yourself, and maintain your family. That's important. But, also, if you can, help your neighbors and be good to people, because a lot of America has gotten away from those community-based and more cooperative aspects of American society that in the past was what made us so successful as a country. Especially today on Veterans Day, you know what I mean? Like them baby boomers would be rolling over in their grave if they knew that we was out here squandering what they left us,
We went from man-made cause incident to things that we can control and things that we can't control. We can control how we spend money, how we invest, prepare for the future. But we cannot control the weather. We could plan a party picnic, but we cannot predict the weather. Sorry, Miss Jackson. I remember Outkast song. That's why I like Outkast, because they break some key fundamental in front of our face. We could plan, but we can't predict the weather. But it's good when we plan. When it start raining, we got that rain jacket. We still gonna get soaked, but we got some extra comfort. When we fall, we could fall on a pillow than a hard floor. And that's what news here for, never in the working service. We working, so we know what to be prepared for. Prepare for problems in the healthcare. Prepare for problems dealing with food. Because we all know that we need food to survive. We need. It's not a want. You need to eat. But if you pick Takis over chicken, that's what you wanted. That's not what you needed. That's what you wanted. So we need to know what the fundamentals of picking what we need to do than what we want to do. And a lot of people living in cities and suburbs and areas with townhouses where they don't own the land, can't grow the food necessary to provide for themselves, least alone a family of 1, 2, 6. So when it comes down to community, we need to know our neighbor. Because 1 minute you might don't know your neighbor, and next minute that neighbor can help you during trying time. Yes, Shan. We have rumors of war. It's still the Ukraine war with Russia. We have Iran and Israel still preparing for another skirmish. We have issue with Donald Trump administration against Nigeria, against Venezuela. North Korea still sending out nuclear capable missiles. The world geography, geopolitics, something that occur in one country can affect us here in America. Something that happened in one state can so we don't want to keep y'all the whole night. We wanted to break down the information and to make you think. So we love you all. If you're a veteran or you have a family member that is a veteran, enjoy the moment with them. Some people serve in World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, secret skirmishes, the Iraq war. Afghanistan war, the longest war we ever had. Tell your family member thank you for their service. And for service members who now in the military, thank you for your service. We appreciate you. Just because we might oppose something our government done or about to do, that don't mean we hate our military. Our military here to serve us. And it'll be a sad day to us all if our military get used against us. So, Shin, you got anything to say as we lead out?
Yep, you already know, man. Well, since it's Veterans Day, you know, I want to just do a special shout out for people in my family who serve in the military, people who I went to school with, people who I've known in my lifetime who's all service members. You know, I just want to thank them, you know, and since it's Armistice Day too, you know, a special shout out for my grandfather, rest in peace, because he was in the army in World War II, fought in the European theater. So I just wanted to make sure I got that out there before I say my typical ending to the show, which is positive vibes means positive results. Positive results means you're accomplishing your goals. Just because you're going through a negative circumstance doesn't mean you can't have a positive outcome. So stay inspired, stay ambitious, and execute. That's all you can do. Gratitude. Peace.
Yes, yes. Love you all.